Oh, hello there. My name is Matthew,
And I'm Kenneth.
and we just saw Blade Runner.
What's the movie about, Matt?
Blade Runner is about a future world overrun by the intermeshing of various cultures on Earth. Horrific dystopian future full of cyclopean architecture and imposing dramatic lighting and desperation, and there are artificial beings called replicants, and you can only tell one of these artificial humans by an extremely complicated emotional test, and if you find one you gotta kill them because they're only allowed off-world.
Right.
And that is the job of the Blade Runner, to determine who is the replicant and to retire them.
The main villains are replicants who've gotten from off-world back onto Earth, the head of which is Roy Batty, played by Rutger Hauer. They were programmed to live only 4 years. So they want to find their creator and see if they can be saved. I've only ever seen the theatrical version. That was the version which has Harrison Ford with a constant narration. And I guess the intention of it was to employ this feeling of like a detective noir, but also to spell out everything for the audience, because in test screenings it seemed like people were confused. So the producers insisted, okay, we're gonna include this narration, and we're gonna tell everybody what's happening every step of the way. So having seen that version, I have to admit I never thought all that much of the movie. There was something about the pacing that felt strange about it. Having seen this version, the way Ridley Scott intended it to be, I completely see why it gets as much praise as it does. Because of the way the pacing's handled, you're able to take in a lot of the atmosphere, which I don't think could be done the same with the theatrical cut. There are little bits where you can tell where people are going just visually. Well, in the theatrical version, Harrison Ford's character, Deckard, he says in the narration, okay, I'm going to Leon's place to investigate such and such. In the version we saw, he listens to a recording from earlier in the movie of Leon saying, I live at this address, and then it just shows them at the apartment. They're not spelling it out so much for the audience. You get a lot from the visuals, you get a lot of world building just by looking. You see this really crowded street, but you also see a walk, don't walk sign, which is completely useless because the streets are just so crowded. Lots of tidbits like that. But Matt, what did you think of the movie before I get too deep into this?
So good. It's just the visuals, the sound design, the plot, just oppressive atmosphere of crowded and filled with all this noise. And it ties into the main characters, these replicants. That's how they feel, right? Living in a society constantly in fear, teeming life and police cars and shadows and spinning fans and all these things that have since become cliches, but in this movie were just invented. The constant fear of who is going to see me, who is going to uncover me. Or it's this vast emptiness when we go to the apartment complex, and it's just this gigantic arbitrary apartment complex that nobody is living in. People build buildings in order to satisfy some human need, right? It just, at some point somebody built this building and nobody lives in it. This void. Why did Tyrell create these replicants? It feels like completely arbitrary. What's the point of their existence? It's kind of depressing. The whole movie is very depressing.
Oh, it is, yeah.
But beautiful, tightly interlocked.
The world building is very, very subtle. They don't explicitly tell you the animals are not real. You get a question from one character saying, oh, is that a real snake? It's like, well, of course not. I wouldn't be working in this dingy place if it was a real snake. Deckard using a payphone, and it charged him like $5 or something for like a minute call or something. It was something ridiculous like that. When I saw the theatrical version, it kind of killed the point of the style for me.
There's this other large aspect of the story that's very controversial. That's different between the theatrical and the...
Oh, yeah.
Is Deckard a replicant?
That's a big question.
In the version that we saw, absolutely he is a replicant.
Yeah.
I know that this is controversial. Philip K. Dick and Dream of Electric Sheep did not like this change.
Harrison Ford didn't like it either.
Harrison Ford did not believe that his character was a replicant. Kenneth, in terms of just the movie, is the movie better served by Deckard being a replicant or not being a replicant?
For certain scenes, like for example him battling Roy Batty, you fear for his life because this guy is just this unstoppable machine. So a replicant versus a replicant, it doesn't quite reach up to that level. But the idea of Deckard being a replicant brings up some other interesting ideas, like the police are using this tool to hunt down the other tools. It's like everyone is just a piece on a chessboard who's just being used. I think I prefer the idea of Deckard being a human just because he and every other human character acts essentially like a robot. So that adds to the texture to the movie. Ridley Scott himself has said that Deckard's a replicant, but the writers, not just Philip K. Dick, but David Webb Peoples, who wrote the script, he said, it's up for interpretation. Every replicant in the movie is called by their first name, whereas every human is called by their last name. And Deckard, you never hear his first name mentioned.
Yeah, I don't know. There are some questions in the movie, like why is he the only one that can take down the replicants? You know, he clearly doesn't want to do it. They got to bring him. He's just like a chosen one? You know, destined to kill every replicant.
Yeah,
it seems strange. All of the replicants have super agility and strength.
Yeah.
And it seems like if he has that, it's only marginally better than normal persons. He can aim that sawed-off rifle pistol that he has really well.
Yeah.
But other than that, he seems to be helpless against all the replicants. You know, even the, what's her name? Pris? Some kind of sex doll, essentially. And she just kicks the shit out of him. I guess if he's a replicant, he's some kind of replicant with a normal human strength and agility. Although, they do seem to be making replicants more and more indistinguishable from human beings. So maybe that is...
He could be the Nexus 7 or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Only in terms of the movie. I've not read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Purely in terms of the movie, I think thematically it works better if he is a replicant. It's just a culmination of all of these ideas. You have an extremely interesting scene in terms of the themes of the movie, where Deckard essentially rapes Rachel.
Yeah.
He knows that she's replicant. It's almost like he's making this decision, in spite of the fact that she has emotions and memories and all these things, that she's just a machine or an object, right? Yeah. He can just do what he likes. Then it kind of comes full circle on him in the end when he decides to run away with Rachel. It sort of gives his character a plausible reason for sympathizing with her. Whereas without that, he kind of rapes her and then they just go off together for some reason.
Which is what the theatrical version is.
Maybe it's not a plot hole, but it's like a character hole.
One thing I notice is that all the replicants' deaths, they're all very disturbing. Leon gets his head blown out the side by Rachel, and the first replicant who Deckard shoots, we see it in slow motion, just blood spurting out and her falling on the ground, falling through glass. This one really got me was Pris. When she gets shot, she starts just writhing, just moving around really fast, like a robot would, but you still see her as a human. It's a way of humanizing them in a way it gets to you.
Right, so you would think that in a movie like this, Harrison Ford is the protagonist, and then whenever he kills a replicant, it's like justified in some way. Even if he's supposed to find out by the end of the story, it's bad to kill replicants, right? Still, the audience is supposed to sympathize with him every step along the way. But that's not what happens in this movie. All of the deaths of the replicants are set in such a way that it's like fucking horrifying. And there's no way to like emotionally sympathize with Harrison Ford as he's doing these things because of the way that it's directed, the way that the shots are set up, the way that you're introduced to the situation. You might be concerned for his safety or something like that, but that's not the same thing as believing that he's doing something that's justified, which is clearly not.
Yeah.
You mentioned the first person he shoots, she's just running away, and it's just completely focused on her, and she's terrified, and she dies horrifically.
Right.
And obviously, the final one is I think, where Roy Batty dies, the replicant is more human than the supposedly human. It's insane. This person whose job it is to murder him, he saves his life and then just doesn't kill him. And then he just gives him this little poem. It's this ultimate ethical question of, can we tell the replicants from the humans? We have this like crazy test that we invented, but it's like, well, let's look at the actions of the characters in the story. And who has the moral high ground here?
Right.
Clearly it's Roy Batty, who decides not to kill Deckard at the end.
Yeah, he actually saves his life when
he saves him, and then he spares him, and then he just magnanimously dies.
Yeah. Adding to that, it's interesting. We never see the robotic innards of any of the replicants. They all just look like humans when they're shot and so on. Who's the real human? And yeah, the person you sympathize the most, the one you understand the most is Roy. We as humans, we don't know when we're going to die, whereas in his case, he has an expiration date and he knows it's coming soon. coming face to face with Tyrell is supposed to be like meeting your creator. You know, it's the Prometheus thing again. I want to live forever.
And it shows that the creator is not superior to the creation. Right? There's this whole business in the book of Job where Job says, gosh, I just wish that I could have like a trial with God. He would just appear and we could argue it out. You know, and then, but God comes, oh shit. And God says, you know, gird up thy loins like a man. And he goes through this long litany of, here's all the things that I'm in charge of. Do you think that you're ready for that? And the answer is, of course, no. But when Tyrell meets this guy, it's just like, well, I don't accept your bullshit explanation for my existence, and I'm going to murder you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not at all like the meeting between Job and God. Just because you can make this thing, it doesn't mean that you're superior to it.
Right. And of course he kills him by poking out his eyes, which, I mean, there's a thematic element of what you see of eyes. One of the first shots we see is the close-up of an iris. Leon tries to kill Deckard by poking out his eyes, just the same way Roy does. Leon and Roy both go to the place where they make the eyes. And of course, one visual tell is that their eyes have this reflection. What you see isn't exactly what's actually going on. You know.
We should talk about the special effects.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's better than what we see today.
It is. It's better. You think of something, what's similar, like a mechanized futuristic city? I think of like Tron. Like they have the new Tron.
Yeah.
You're like, man, that just looks like a reboot compared to this.
Yeah,
it looks
really does.
Neon and plastic and fake. And this, they built tiny versions of the buildings and used mirrors so they could get two versions of the same building in one shot. It looks so fucking fantastic.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Design and cinematography by Douglas Trumbull, who also did 2001: A Space Odyssey. And the fact that they built New Los Angeles, or whatever it was called, the amount of detail that they put in, this is back when, you know, they put effort into movies. I mean,
yeah, it makes you wonder, because if they were doing these establishing shots in CGI, if you don't like the shot, you can just change the angle or whatever. Here, it enforces such a discipline. A titanic amount of money goes into the shot. Before we start building this humongously expensive thing, what is the absolute best shot that we want?
Right.
And like that kind of discipline, like does that even exist anymore? You could just say, well, we're modeling all this in 3D, so, you know, we don't like it, we just move the camera over here a little bit.
Right. And the fact that you have that restriction, that adds to the art. Almost every shot in this movie looks like, you know, it could be a painting. I mean, we said the same thing when we watched Manhunter. The shots are chosen very specifically. Yeah, great movie. Those are our thoughts on Blade Runner. And we are the Movie Meisters saying,
cinema is not a slice of life, but a piece of cake.
Thanks for watching.